The words came out so quietly that Ellen almost missed them. But when she heard what the woman in the front row whispered, everything stopped. The music died, the cameras froze, and America's most beloved talk show host did something that broke every rule of television. She walked away from her biggest celebrity guest and knelt down beside a stranger who was about to change her life forever. It was supposed to be the show of the season. Kevin Hart, Hollywood's highest-paid comedian, was on Ellen's couch promoting his latest blockbuster. The studio was electric with energy, packed with 400 audience members who had waited months for tickets. Ellen, radiant in her signature emerald green blazer, was in peak form, matching Kevin's rapid-fire jokes with her own perfectly timed responses. "So, Kevin," Ellen said, leaning forward with that mischievous smile that signaled trouble, "I heard you tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner for your family last month." Kevin threw his hands up in mock surrender. "Ellen, don't even start. I burned water. Literally burned water. My wife banned me from the kitchen for life." The audience erupted in laughter. This was exactly the kind of light-hearted banter that made Ellen's show appointment television for millions of viewers. "But seriously," Kevin continued, his voice taking on a more sincere tone, "family means everything to me. When you almost lose someone you love, you realize how precious every moment really is." That's when Ellen noticed her. In the front row, directly behind Kevin's left shoulder, sat a woman who couldn't have been more than 35. She had dark brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a faded blue hospital uniform underneath a worn cardigan. Her name tag read, "Sofia, Pediatric Unit." But it wasn't her appearance that caught Ellen's attention. It was the way she was looking at Kevin, not with the starstruck expression of a typical audience member, but with something deeper. Recognition, pain, understanding. Sofia's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and Ellen could see them trembling slightly. As Kevin continued talking about the importance of family, Sofia's eyes filled with tears that she was trying desperately to hold back. Ellen had learned to read her audience after 20 years of television. She could spot the tourists from the locals, the superfans from the casual viewers, the people who were there for fun versus those who needed something more. And everything about Sofia screamed that she was carrying something heavy. "Kevin," Ellen interrupted gently, "hold that thought for just a second." Kevin paused mid-sentence, following Ellen's gaze to the audience. The production team in the control room stirred nervously. This wasn't part of the script. Ellen stood up from her chair and took a few steps toward the audience. "Ma'am, in the blue uniform, are you okay?" The studio fell silent. 400 people turned to look at Sofia, who now had tears streaming openly down her face. She shook her head quickly, embarrassed by the sudden attention. "I'm sorry," Sofia whispered, her voice barely audible even with the studio's sensitive microphones. "I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just what he said about family." Ellen didn't hesitate. She walked down the steps that separated the stage from the audience, something she rarely did during tapings. Her instincts told her this moment was more important than any celebrity interview. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellen asked, now standing directly in front of Sofia. "Sofia Ramirez. I work at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles." "And what happened to make you so upset?" Sofia looked around at all the cameras, at Kevin Hart watching from the stage, at the hundreds of audience members staring at her. For a moment, she seemed ready to retreat back into silence. But something in Ellen's eyes, that genuine warmth that had made her America's therapist, gave Sofia the courage to speak. "3 days ago," Sofia said, her voice growing stronger, "I lost a patient. a little boy named Miguel. He was 8 years old, and he had leukemia. I'd been his nurse for 2 years. Through all his treatments, all his surgeries, he called me Tia Sofia. Ellen knelt down in front of Sofia's seat, her emerald blazer spreading around her like wings. The studio cameras adjusted to capture both women. But this was no longer about television. This was about human connection. "Tell me about Miguel," Ellen said softly. "He loved your show," Sofia said, her voice breaking. "Every day during his treatments, we would watch Ellen together on the tablet. He would laugh at your monologue, try to guess the answers on your games. When he was in pain, when the chemo made him sick, I would put on your show, and for 30 minutes, he could forget about being sick and just be a little boy who loved to laugh." Kevin Hart, still sitting on the stage, had gone completely quiet. His usual animated energy was replaced by something much more profound as he watched this moment unfold. "The day before he passed," Sofia continued, "Miguel made me promise him something. He said, 'Tia Sofia, when I go to heaven, will you tell Ellen thank you? Tell her she made me happy when nothing else could.'" Ellen's composure cracked. Not the professional crack of someone trying to maintain their image, but the real, human crack of a mother, of someone who understood that some promises are sacred. "Oh, Sofia," Ellen whispered, taking the young nurse's hands in her own. "I didn't know how to find you," Sofia said. "I couldn't afford to come to a taping, but my supervisor, she knew what Miguel meant to me, and she surprised me with tickets. She said Miguel would have wanted me to keep my promise." Ellen stood up slowly, still holding Sofia's hands, and turned to face Kevin. "Kevin," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I know we had a whole segment planned, but would you mind if we did something different?" Kevin Hart, the man who made millions of people laugh for a living, nodded without hesitation. "Ellen, whatever you need to do for this lady, we're going to do it." Ellen turned back to Sofia. "I want you to come up on stage with me. I want you to tell me more about Miguel, and I want everyone watching to know about this little boy who loved to laugh." Sofia shook her head. "I can't. I'm just a nurse. I'm not supposed to be on television." "Sofia," Ellen said firmly, "you're not just anything. You're someone who spent 2 years making a sick child's life better. You're someone who kept a promise to a dying boy. If that doesn't earn you a spot on this stage, then nothing does." Ellen helped Sofia up from her seat and guided her onto the stage. The audience broke into spontaneous applause, not the manufactured excitement of a game show, but the deep, respectful recognition of someone truly worthy of honor. Once they were seated together on the couch, with Kevin having graciously moved to the side chair, Ellen asked Sofia to tell Miguel's story. And as Sofia spoke about the brave little boy who never complained, who always asked about Sofia's family before talking about his own pain, who drew pictures for the other children in the ward, the studio transformed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was testimony. It was witness. It was the kind of moment that reminded everyone watching why human connection matters more than anything else in the world. "Sofia," Ellen said when the story was finished, "I need you to know something. Miguel's message, his thank you, it doesn't just matter to me, it matters to everyone. Because what you've shown us today is what real heroism looks like. It's not in movies or on stages. It's in hospital rooms at 3 in the morning. It's in the promise you make to a dying child and the courage it takes to keep it." Ellen reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her personal business card. "This has my direct number on it, not for interviews, not for publicity, because Miguel was right to love you, and you're right to honor his memory, and I want to make sure you never feel alone in doing that." But Ellen wasn't finished. She began removing her emerald blazer, the one that had become her trademark. "This blazer," Ellen said, "has been with me for some of the most important shows of my career. It's been there when I've tried to spread joy, when I've tried to make people feel seen. Now I want it to be with someone who understands what it really means to take care of people." She placed the blazer around Sofia's shoulders, and the young nurse was immediately transformed. Not just by the expensive garment, but by what it represented: recognition, respect, and the understanding that her work mattered. Kevin Hart, who had been watching this entire exchange in respectful silence, stood up and addressed the camera directly. "You know what?" he said. "I came here today to promote a movie, but I'm leaving having learned something much more important. Sofia, you just reminded all of us what real strength looks like. And Miguel, if you're listening, buddy, your tia Sofia kept her promise. Ellen knows how special you were, and now all of us do too." 6 months later, Sofia Ramirez had become a regular advocate for pediatric cancer research. The episode had sparked a national conversation about the heroes working in children's hospitals, and donations to childhood cancer programs had increased by 300%. Sofia used her newfound platform to share Miguel's story and the stories of dozens of other young patients who deserved to be remembered. Ellen kept in touch with Sofia, not as a celebrity helping a fan, but as one human being supporting another. And every year on the anniversary of Miguel's passing, Ellen's show featured a segment called Miguel's Heroes, highlighting the extraordinary nurses, doctors, and caregivers who make children's last days brighter. Because sometimes the most important moments happen when we stop performing and start listening. When we realize that the real stars aren't on the stage, but in the audience, carrying stories that need to be heard and promises that deserve to be kept. Ellen learned that day that her job wasn't to entertain people. It was to create space for the stories that matter, for the promises that heal, and for the love that Miguel's short life had left behind in the heart of someone brave enough to honor his memory in front of the world.